following episode is for adult audiences only. The opinions expressed are those of the individual on the show and do not reflect those of any employer, organizations, or foundations. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Road Death Traveled Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Road Death Travel Podcast. My name is Jason Pat. I am your host. I'm here with my co-host, Rob Tovar Jr.
Hey.
And with us today is our special guest, the Honorable Allen Lynch.
Howdy.
Thanks for joining us, Al.
Glad to be here.
First of all, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Bearded Veterans Grill. They have the best coffee, barbecue sauces, and rubs in the business. Veteran-owned. Make sure you try them out. Also, Three Rangers Whiskey. Also, check out their foundation. Thank you very much. You guys, toast. We have a little bit of Three Rangers here in the glass.
Salute.
Salute. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff. That's good stuff, huh?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
All righty. So, Al, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So, Al here is a Medal of Honor recipient. Obviously, thank you for your service to our country and everything you did and you sacrificed, especially coming from me as a fellow vet. I really appreciate everything you did.
Well, thanks for serving.
Appreciate it. So, obviously, you know you're here and you have that wonderful medal around your neck. Why don't you tell us about how you earned that?
It was we walked into an ambush. It was a pretty bad one. We were actually had been out in the field for like 3 months, almost straight. Very little time back in the rear with the gear, and we had just gotten back in. We were going to a stand down where you get refitted and retooled, and you get your weapons checked and all that. And we were supposed to be there for like 3 or 4 days just to take it easy because we had been in constant contact. Well, A Company walked into an ambush, and we were told we had air assault in and hit the enemy from the side. What we didn't know was the A Company was the bait, and so we walked into this ambush. They let us get all the way in, of course, which is what you do, and before they opened up. So I was an RTO for my lieutenant, so I was basically like his shadow. So wherever he went, I went, because I had the radio, and he was, the guy that did all the calling and all that, and I'd call in and do what he told me to do. And we had a two-man point. Point is someone that walks out in front of the unit, and they got hit pretty bad. Sergeant Casares was hitting the shins, and both shins were pretty messed up. Wilhelm come running back and got hit halfway out, and went out and got him, and he says, Casares is laying there, he can't move, and blah, blah, blah. And so I asked the LT if I could drop my radio and go out and get him, and my idea was I was going to go out, grab him, bring him back. Well, by the time I got in the trench and got down to him, all hell broke loose. And I was trying to figure out how I could carry him, his weapon, me, my weapon. I had left the radio. And when Esparza comes running across and gets shot about halfway to us, so I went out and I got him. He got shot in the leg, and so I got him back in the trench. So now there's 3 of us in the trench, and as we're laying there, Esparza gets hit in the arm, which he ended up losing because I guess it was a dirty bullet. And basically, I just stayed there with them. They came out. It was kind of, things that make you go, Yeah. We were in the ditch. We were, shooting a bunch of the VC. We had a hedgerow of bamboo, so we could hear them, but we couldn't see them. And they could probably hear us, but couldn't see us. So they would talk, and we'd fire them up. So we took care of a few of them like that. Then they called in, they tried to get to us. Unbeknownst to me, my lieutenant, who was brand new, fought tooth and nail to get out to the unit on the air assault. They kept telling him, no, wait till after this operation is done, and then they come in and join. He refused. So as we're laying in the ditch, Lieutenant Sutherland, along with my company commander, Captain Orsini, came out with a group to try to rescue us, and they came under heavy fire. Sutherland was killed. He hadn't been with the unit 4 hours, and he was gone. Shot in the head. Or they went back. They tried to come out again. This time with an APC. Orsini was in the command, in the top of the APC, the command turret, and he got hit by an RPG that literally blew him out of the turret. And he landed on the ground, of course, severely wounded. They withdrew, and they said, "That's it. We're done. We can't risk any more people." So we lay there for quite a while. They called in artillery and airstrikes. When one jet came over, this is why I wish I would have studied math more, because the jet came over and he released the napalm bomb right over our head. Wow. And he's flying a treetop, and I'm figuring, we're crispy critters, we're done. Well, speed, distance, and all of that math stuff said it was going to hit probably 100 meters away from us, which it did. I tried to light a cigarette off the flame. It spars the blood over the matches.
Yeah.
It's like, in the movies, you always have your last cigarette before you die. And
yeah.
That's when I decided I was going to quit. So after all the airstrikes and that, I went out and kind of reconnoitered the area and got to a safe place. My thing was I was going to take them like 50 meters, do a little recon, and take them another 50, and then I didn't walk 25 feet, and there our unit was behind some jungle stuff, in a ravine, and we went out and rescued them and came back, and that was it. And then 1970, just the day before I was to get married, I was told I was going to get the Medal of Honor, and I couldn't understand why, but there it is.
Wow. That's a hell of a story, man.
Well, it was a hell of a day. We lost a lot of people. My lieutenant was killed trying to get to us, and my company commander was severely wounded. Actually ended up joining the unit. I was already out in the rear, which drove me insane, but he came back to the unit and led it in combat again. And it was a hell of a day.
Wow. What branch are you in?
Army.
Army.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice. What years did you serve?
I served from November of 1964 all the way through active duty till 1969 when I got out. And then I spent 21 years in the Guard and Reserve program. I retired in '94.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I love the brotherhood of the military. I was kind of floundering when I got out of active duty. Unless you've been there, wore the uniform, you have a hard time talking to civilians. They don't understand some of the instantaneous decisions you have to make. So I was lucky. I joined the reserve unit, and a lot of the guys in my reserve unit were Vietnam vets. And so that was kind of our therapy. At the end of drill, we'd go down to the local pub and have a pizza and tell war stories and, toast to our absent comrades and all of that. It really helped me out a lot. I still had PTSD pretty bad, but that kept me kind of functioning.
Well, that's good. So obviously I've known you for a little bit, Al.
Yeah.
We've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
You have a foundation.
Yes.
What's the name of your foundation?
The Allen J. Lynch Medal of Honor Veterans Foundation, a name I did not choose. It was forced upon me by friends who are very persuasive, and they said, look, you bring a certain credibility. You've been working with veterans all your life. I started off with the VA in 1970 when I got the medal. Ended up working with the Vietnam Veterans Leadership Program for I think 3 years. Then I went to the Illinois Attorney General's office, where I worked until I retired in 2005. So I have a lot of veteran background. And they said, you bring that to the party, and the name recognition and all of that. So we formed it like that. What we do is we help organizations We used to do individual casework because that's where I cut my teeth. I used to do a lot of casework. I filed appeals and worked appeals all the way through the Board of Veteran Appeals, and could have gone to the court. And I was, you know, everybody's good at something. I was really, really, really good at that. I won almost all my cases, and I didn't cherry pick them. When I got out, I just wanted to retire and sit back and take it easy and not do much. And then they brought the Medal of Honor convention to Chicago, and I started doing more stuff there. And then my buddy John Schwan and Bruce Peterson and Paul Bryan, they said, well, we need to have a foundation, and we're going to make one. And so we did casework. It was just the four of us. Then we joined another organization that I won't mention because we didn't leave them with happy thoughts. And when we reformed the foundation, we decided that we could better our funds by helping other organizations that need a little funding, like we help Veterans Smiles. And what they do is they take veterans that have bad teeth that are looking for work. Well, you know, if you got a smile and a mouthful of bad teeth, that's not going to go well. So we help them with some of the vets that need, you know, $2,500, $3,000. We work with Warrior Scholarship Program. We do a little work, casework. We worked with the Evanston American Legion with a veteran that needed some help to get a job, some training, you know, different things like that.
Very cool. So when you received the medal,
Mm-hmm.
which president awarded that to you?
Nixon.
President Nixon.
Yep, 1970, Richard Nixon.
And that was done at the White House, correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. We, I've never flown first class in my life.
Oh.
They flew us out first class, and I was spoiled. It was like, you know, back, of course, this is back in 1970 where you could get on an airplane without, you know, sacrificing your firstborn. And so it was just neat. They boarded us on the plane. They flew us out to Washington. My wife and I went first class. My mom, dad, and my military entourage sat in coach, which I kind of liked. Kind of liked that. We got a suite. My mom and dad got a room. Kind of like that. Not that I'm a mean guy, but it was just kind of like, yeah, dude, you know.
You earned it.
Yeah, well, besides, you know, my dad was a hard ass, and I think it made him very proud in the fact that I got a big room and he didn't. Was frosting on the cake. So we get to Washington. They give us a briefing. They show us around town. They take us out to the club. We go to the East Room of the White House, I think it was, and you know, we're there with 12 others, and President Nixon walks in and does his speech and starts presenting the medals to us, and it was awesome. And then we got a VIP tour. Not only did we get to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, we got to go into the back to see how they train.
Wow.
Which is just awesome.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then out to a nice dinner that night, and then home the next day. And I mean, we literally went from being royalty to coming home and see you. You know, they dropped us off at the house, at our apartment, and that was it. And it was like, man, I can get used to this. This is pretty nice, you know. Everything was free. Everything was, you know, first class, and it was just a great experience. And I'm a blue collar kid. I hated school, hated high school, hated grade school, hated doing any of that stuff. I was bullied when I was a kid, and here I am in Washington getting the Medal of Honor. Who knew?
That's crazy. So let's talk about, if you don't mind,
No.
Some of the after effects of some of the stuff that you experienced ever since you know, the incident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how have you been since then?
I had a rough. I started with PTSD in 1973. My son was born in 1972. We had just moved into a townhouse. And I was walking home, and it was a steamy, hot summer day, and it was raining. And I had no problem with Vietnam before that at all, none. And so I get home, and we're sitting down to dinner after I get dried off. There's a crack of lightning, rumble of thunder, and I'm on the ground. And my wife is looking at me like, what's that? And that started the whole thing. I'd get angry, I'd get depressed, I'd get have thoughts I didn't want to have, intrusive thoughts. I went the whole route, and it was over. And of course, see, I'm a traditional. I was born in '45, and my parents came out of the Great Depression, came out of World War II, and men keep things in, and that's what I was taught. You don't need help. You just deal with it. Well, I dealt with it by punching walls, by being an ass, by not being very nice to my family, my wife. And yet I would have great times where I would coach baseball and we would go scouts, and then I would go down in the dumps. Something would happen. I don't like to use the word trigger, but there were these things that would just happen. And I would find myself slipping into depression and slipping into getting angry and blowing up. And I was controlled at work because my dad, and I thank my dad every day because he gave me a work ethic, because if I didn't have that, I think I could have gone a lot different place. But it was just trying to figure out how to be not just good at work, where I could, put on the face, except for one time where I almost punched my boss.
I think we've all had that moment.
But other than that, I was pretty much maintaining at work, and I was maintaining at church, and but I get home, and then it would be the jerk would come out, and I was not the best parent. I was not the best husband, and because I wasn't wounded, and a lot of Medal of Honor recipients, were wounded horribly, sometimes losing arms and legs, or horribly facially scarred and all that. I felt guilty, so I would have pity parties for myself. And I happened to be hanging with a bunch of vets that just love to have pity parties. Pity poor me, look at me, my life is sucks, la la. And so I go to Washington. We go to a convention in Hawaii, and if you go to Punch Bowl, there's pylons with the names of all those that died in the Pacific. And I was just walking around the pylons, looking at the names, and I'd gladly trade places with you. Pity poor me, And in my church, we call it a God moment. It was like somebody slapped me in the back of the head and said, "You rotten SOB, how dare you? You have a wife, you have kids, you have everything that these men and women could never have. How dare you?" And that was back in, I think, 81. And it made me better for a while.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any therapy. And so after a little bit, I kind of slipped back into my old habits. And then my mother-in-law passed away, and that was about 2 years of my wife. And during the time when I was concentrating on my wife and her losing her mom and me losing one of the greatest mother-in-laws that ever lived, really kind of made me focus on them. And I was thinking about her. And then when that was over again, I started that slip and slide into, depression. And it just kept getting worse. And then finally, in the early 90s, I realized I needed to get therapy, otherwise I was not going to do well. And so I started seeing Betsy up at the Evanston Vet Center, who basically, she had no idea sometimes where I was at when I walked in, because there were certain things, been in the VA long enough to know there's certain things you don't tell the doctors.
Absolutely.
So, but she got me to do things that helped me deal with the PTSD and set me on a better path. And then my dad got lung cancer as I was in the middle of therapy, and I started concentrating again on him. I would go out every other weekend when he was doing fairly well, ended up going to the hospitals a lot. When I was concentrating on my mother-in-law and all of that, and I was concentrating on my dad, I had no symptoms. Because, you're a good son, you go out, you take care of your mom, you're trying to help things through. My dad passed away. We were taking care of my mom. My mom had a massive stroke a couple of years later. I was going out to the nursing home to see her. During this time, I had no problems. I was totally focused on go to work, you know, do Little League, whatever else, go take care of my dad, my mom. After they passed away, I started having symptoms again. And I usually get solace walking in the woods. And I'm out in the woods one day, and it was like, you know, kind of like a man drowning in knee-deep water. And it hit me. When I was concentrating on all of them and all of what was going on, and I wasn't looking at myself, my symptoms lessened. So I decided that I was going to try to put others first. That's why I got on my coin, others, not self. Because I think a lot of us, when we get PTSD, it becomes all about me, how I feel, what I want, when I want, how I want, who I want, and all the rest of this crap. When you concentrate on, how's this going to affect my wife? How's this going to affect my kids? Gee, my son is getting married, you know, I need to be there for her. My daughter's having problems at school. My wife is going through some physical things. You know, you concentrate on somebody else. It's not all about you. And suddenly you start feeling pretty darn good about yourself because you're giving to others. And so I started doing that probably about 90, 98. And it's been a rough road because when you're selfish, a selfish jackass like I was, it's a hard habit to change. But still working on it, but made some progress.
Well, I want to go back a little bit to something that you said.
Sure.
You said that you were not wounded,
No.
you know, but I'm gonna disagree with you on that. There's something that I strongly believe, and I know you and I have kind of had these conversations in the past. There's a saying that not all wounds are visible.
Right.
And when you talk about PTSD, you know, you were wounded.
Oh yeah, in that sense.
Yeah, maybe not physically, but there's other types of wounds that you can have.
Yeah.
So when you say you weren't wounded, I know you say you weren't, but you were. And you know that sucks. And you know, we've had, like I said, we've had these conversations. Yeah. I'm in the same boat that you know that you're in, where I went through, you know, some very similar things. I just want to touch on one more thing, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
Sure.
This is kind of something that bothers me, and I'm sure it pisses you off even more than it pisses me off. When we talked, when we started the podcast with you earlier, you know, I mentioned how you were awarded or you earned the Medal of Honor. Mm-hmm. Just for clarification, if you want to touch on it, something really pisses me off is when people say that you won the Medal of Honor. I hear that from people, and it really ticks me off. And I correct them immediately. Nobody wins. You weren't on The Price is Right. You know, you weren't on a game show. You didn't win that. You earned that. You were awarded that. Would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, it's there's a very fine line. You know, you get some phenomenal people that are trying to say very nice things, and they use the word Medal of Honor win. I've even, you know, had it with military people, and pretty high-ranking military people. And you have to take it in context. You know, some people just don't understand that it's earned. You're a recipient. You're not a winner. But on the other hand, I'm not so... I've got a thick skin. And if you're calling me a winner with all of the best of intentions, I'm not going to correct you. I just think it is what it is. You know, it's hard for people to get. I mean, it's been a winner when I was a kid. It was a winner, and I was a history nut. I love history, and you know, Medal of Honor winners or recipients, and you know. So it just depends. It really does with me. I got a thick skin mostly.
And I guess sorry, I did say one more thing, but I do have one more thing to ask you. Why don't you tell everybody about your book?
Oh, okay. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. One of my best friends I've known, he's like my older brother, John Schwan, and he worked with the Pritzker Military Library and Museum. and he was on me for a while to write a book, because I was a bullied kid, and I've gone through post-traumatic stress, and I've come out on the other side, and I've had a pretty interesting story looking back, which is amazing to me. And he said, you need to write a book, because there's a lot of kids that are bullied, that's the only thing they know. They have to know that there's something other than being bullied, that grade school and high school pass away and life comes. And veterans need to know that there's a way out of PTSD. It may not work for everybody, but it worked for you, and that's a story that needs to be told. So I wrote my biography. And I wasn't going to do it, but Pritzker said she would pay me. So I took the money, because, I did
Money talks.
Money talks, and so she paid me. So I wrote it. It's called Zero to Hero, From Bullied Kid to Warrior. And what I wanted to do with it, because I'm a history nut, is I wanted to make it just as historically accurate as I could. So I didn't pull any punches. It's with all my warts, all the goofy things that I did, and stupid things that I did. I get tired of reading biographies that are, white knight in shining armor kind of thing. So, but I also wanted to tell a little bit of the history of how I grew up and when I grew up and where it was and all of that.
Very cool.
That's available on Amazon.
Awesome. Good plug.
Thank you.
Well, before you have any questions before we wrap up? I got a couple things for.
I had a couple that came to mind, because even the subtitle, the from bully to hero, or from bullied kid zero to hero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many kids will get watching the podcast, but I know that Jason and I both have children. We all grew up in different eras. What would you say to the bullied kids now, with all of the just pat them on the back and
My bullies. It was weird. I went out to the school that I was bullied in. I think it was like 1999, 2000. And when I walked into the school, it was now a new school and nicely built and all that. The secretary was one of my classmates when I was in grade school.
Okay.
And so there were 3 kids. I'll call them Larry, Moe, and Curly. That were the big bullies.
Okay.
And made my life a living hell. And I said, whatever happened to Larry, Moe, and Curly? And she says, well, Larry's up here at the bar probably getting drunk, because that's where he always is. The 2 brothers that bullied me, one ended up going to prison. One was arrested as being a peeping Tom. Bullies never end up well. They never do. In my experience, and I've had long, bullies are not good people. And what goes around comes around. If you're a bully, it's going to come back to get you. There's always someone out there that's going to give you a curtain call.
Yeah.
There's always someone out there that's going to make you come to task. And bullies basically are cowards.
Right. Covering up something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the second question I had is, both of us are God-fearing men. I call it the strings of God, or like God's finger on your life. Do you ever look back on that and just, especially when you had that come to God moment, where it was like, oh, you've been here the whole time?
Oh yeah. My faith has never left me. I got saved back in 1970. I was listening to a lot of radio programs, driving to and from work and all that. And even in Vietnam, I was Catholic in Vietnam. I no longer stayed Catholic when I got, because they changed the mass. But as I look back now at 77 years, and I go back and I'm going, how did I get here? How did I get this medal? How did I write a book? How do I have a foundation? And I see God's hand just moving gently in my life and pushing me along the way. When I was having horrible thoughts about doing things to myself, there was always something holding me back. Faith, it's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. And I'm convinced that if our country could just have a revival, if we could just get back to the basics of God, our country would be a lot better than it is right now.
Well said. Well said. I like that. Did you have any other?
No. Well, Al, thank you very much for being on the show.
Pleasure.
We really, really appreciate it. It's been an honor. It's an honor for you to be here. It's an honor for me to call you brother, and to call you a friend. And I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everything you've done for me, everything you've done for our country, and everything you continue to do for our fellow vets. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I think you know how sincere that is. So before we go, I have something for you. We have our official Road Death Traveled podcast t-shirt, which is available online. We will have more designs coming out, but right now this is our official t-shirt. So Al, that's for you. And like we do with all of our episodes, we like to end on a nice little funny note. So before the episode began, for privacy reasons, we're not doing letting your birth date out, but we do a little thing called Florida Man. And so we have your birth date before we got here. And so as everybody knows, sometimes online you see all these goofy stories about Florida man did this or Florida man did that. So, you know, we kind of take the birth date and we find a goofy story. So Al, we looked up yours, and here's the headline: Florida man arrested after throwing pumpkin on his girlfriend following argument at McDonald's. So apparently they were in the drive-thru, and she wanted no cheese on her hamburger, and he failed to ask for no cheese or something like that, and it didn't happen. So he launched a pumpkin at her in the car in the drive-thru of the McDonald's.
I'm shocked.
What do you have to say about that?
I don't live in Florida.
How do you hide a pumpkin?
How do you throw a pumpkin at a car?
That's kind of like...
I mean, how big was it?
The article didn't say. It just said that he launched a pumpkin at her.
Oh, he got a pumpkin launcher just on the side of it.
He threw a pumpkin at her. I don't know. But
this is why I don't live in Florida. There's too many Florida men down there.
I'm telling you.
They're all nuts.
I'm telling you.
I don't endorse marriage tips from Florida.
No, never.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining us for this episode of the Road Death Travel Podcast. Once again, my name is Jason Pat. My co-host, Rob Tovar Jr., our special guest, Allen Lynch. Al, thanks again.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
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 Cheers. Al, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Salute. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Platicar con la muerte.